Hello world, and welcome to our live stream. I'm Aaron.
And I'm Freq Girl.
And today we are joined by Nandor Fox Shaffer, here to tell us all about his current crowdfunding campaign, Man-Child Number 1, over on Kickstarter. Nandor, welcome to the show.
Hey guys, thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited.
We're so glad to have you here. It's been a while in the making, actually. We wanted to get to talk to you about Seasons, but we missed our opportunity to do that. It was a very exciting campaign. I mean, I really liked the idea of it. So you're actually
Thank you.
A very innovative, and I don't use that word lightly, at least you're creative in the way that you're doing books. Your
Thanks, man.
Seasons books, they come out almost like quarterly. You know, each book is a season unto itself. Lifeline was a book that it was written by you, but it was drawn by different artists in sequence over the course of a person's life, right?
Yeah, completely. You got it. Nailed it on the head there.
So that's, you're playing with different ways to tell stories. And I really dig that. I love the idea that you're telling a story and you're expressing it through sequential art, but you're also doing a little spin or a little play on that by incorporating another element, and that's been time. In so far, it's been like Seasons was time. The what was Lifeline? I just blanked.
Yeah,
Lifeline was also you were playing with time. So I'm interested to see what you do with Man-Child. But before we get into that, why don't you tell us about Foxhole Comics?
Before we even do that, we need to say hello to our chat.
Before we anger the chat, let's say hello to everyone over there. We have got Oliver from 656 Studios. Hey, Hi. Oliver. Good to see you here. We've got some angry guy in the comments.
This guy.
We've got Mo Biggs. We've got Salazar Art Nation. How's it going, Frank?
So you've
Glad
been the elusive thumbs downer. I finally got you, Frank.
Hey, it's engagement, right? We've got Ichthus. What is up, Total Excellence? Glad to have you here. We've got Will from Creators Outlet, as well as Greg Levitt. Hail! What is up, Gun Demon Greg? And we've got Pops Van Zant from Comics Talks with Pops Van Zant. Pops just had an auction, actually, the Crom auction. I heard really good things about it. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend and throw some cash down on the table for a good and worthy cause, but maybe in the future, Pops will be doing another one. We'll have to let you guys know all about it when that happens.
Hi, Dee Dee.
Oh, yeah. Kayla's on here, too.
Yeah.
She's watching on Facebook, though.
Yeah. We still say hello to her.
Yeah, you do still say hello to her. It's just that they can't see each other's comments.
It's true, but that's why I put her on the screen.
So,
I'm smart like that.
Why don't we talk about Foxhole Comics? That's the name of your imprint, right? Was it inspired by the Foxhole series by Jack Kirby, or is it a play off of your middle name? What's up with that?
Yeah, actually, more so the middle name, but when I found out that Jack Kirby had a Foxhole series that he did, it kind of helped solidify the name, because I was going back and forth with different, what do I want to call it? It has to be something that represents me, something that people can look at and go, oh, that's his. And so the more I was playing around with different names, thinking of different names, and also trying to have a name that would fit a YouTube channel too, because I wanted to kind of get my feet wet when it comes to being more transparent with my audience and talking with them and doing streams and stuff. I thought Foxhole sounded like a really great kind of intimate personal setting, and kind of isolated too, because that's kind of my life as a writer. It's very isolated, and it kind of has that sense of also you're in the midst of not necessarily battle with other comic book creators, but there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of people talking, there's a lot of drama sometimes. And so I wanted to make an imprint in a place where I can just do my own thing and, work on my own stuff, and have people hear, Foxhole, and they think of me instantly, and they think of my name and what I have to offer.
I thought it was a great coincidence that Kirby wrote the Foxhole series. I mean, that's not the coincidental. It's you named your imprint kind of as a play on your middle name, last name, hyphenated name. I'm not sure. Is Foxhole
Yeah,
one
middle
of
name.
yours?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's a
And
play on your
it's
middle
my
name,
real
but
middle name too, so it's not fake.
well, our artist Garrett's middle name is Orion, so we're interested.
Oh,
We
that's
have
awesome.
interesting names around here. But he then I found out that Kirby,
Yeah.
wrote the Foxhole series, and it's funny because you're an admirer of Silver Age comics. The Marvel Age
Yeah,
comics,
completely.
and Kirby was writing, the War series Foxhole. So I just loved the confluence there. That wonderful, serendipitous
Yeah.
coincidence. And it seems like that's really meant to be.
See what happens when you put two writers on a stream together? You get confluence and serendipitous and
Two writers who also named their comic book companies after other people's comic books, right?
fair.
Yes, we are Global Frequency Studios. We believe that there is a global frequency, and everyone deserves to be on it because everyone needs to be heard. But I also love Warren Ellis. So, when you were growing up, what was the first book that you fell in love with? Comic book, I'm saying. Not
yeah,
novel. Who
yeah,
cares about reading, right?
So the first comic book that I fell in love with was Captain America by Brubaker and Steve Epting. So their run on Captain America in the early to mid 2000s, with the death of Captain America, bringing in Winter Soldier, and bringing Captain America back, and just I really fell in love not only with the storytelling but with Steve Epting, and his work and his art, because he's one of those artists that isn't doing a lot right now, but at the time he was really, kind of the bee's knees when it comes to what he was able to bring to the table. And he he's one of those artists that is modern, but when you look at it, it has a classic feel, and it looks like his style fits these characters, like they're bringing these classic characters to the modern day. And that's something that I love as a comic book fan, and that I really look for when it comes to my kind of style and what I love to read and stuff. But what I also loved about that run too, and it's something that you definitely see in my work, is Ed Brubaker is one of the best people, one of the best writers that I've seen that can write inner dialogue and narration for characters, and really give a character a voice and a personality when you read their thoughts. And that's something that I remember as I was reading what made comics so special to me, and something that made comics stand out between in the midst of all these other mediums, whether it's movies or reading a book or TV or whatever. And it was really having those intimate moments with those characters and really getting inside their head. And the way that he would do that with Steve Rogers or Bucky Barnes was just really eye-opening to me, and made me appreciate comics as a medium even more. And that was one of the first books that I started getting on a monthly basis. When I found out that you could get comics on a monthly basis, I was just like mind blown. So that really started it. And I really started to read comics consistently during the heroic age, when they did that with Bendis on Avengers and Matt Fraction on Invincible Iron Man, Brubaker on Captain America, and Hickman on Fantastic Four. It was really that era that made me such a comic book nerd where I just couldn't get enough.
That's a really comprehensive, I guess cross section of what got you into comics and what inspired you.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone's ever answered that question so thoroughly before. For me, it was like, I like X-Men, you know? But you really narrowed it down to like, you know the time, you know the book,
Yeah.
but you also know the era of comics that
Yeah,
captivated you.
it
And
was
you know
like
why,
such a perfect.
too. So you're very
Yeah,
conscious of it.
yeah. It was such a like at the time, you know, Marvel was doing something, and it seemed like they had a lot of great heads that were working together and communicating with each other. And I know they had them as like the architects, is like what they called them, and uh, every major book that they had was being written, or the creative team that was on that book was just killing it. Like they were doing such a good job with the characters and the characterizations for all of them. And soon after, like it was Brubaker's Captain America, but then as I kept reading Hickman, he really became the writer that I wanted to be like, or that I wanted to read all of his stuff, and I read more and more
Hickman
of
could
his
be
stuff.
very underestimated. You know, he's not
Yeah,
very hyped up. A
yeah.
lot of people like they'll look at Gaiman instead, you know, or they'll look at some of the other like writers who oh no, I'm thinking of Morrison. My bad. I'm totally like misplacing my timelines right now. This is what happens when you
Yeah.
talk to the guy who has a memory like a sieve about like time frames. Jeez.
Yeah.
So, what are some of your favorite comic book characters? First, do you like Marvel or DC more? I'm gonna say
For
Marvel.
yeah, like growing up, I gravitated more towards Marvel. And in recent, like the past year or two, I've been reading more DC, and I don't know if that's just because I'm finding what they're doing right now, or I'm looking back at things that I had missed at the time, and I'm kind of going back there and looking back. And like I just read Justice by Jim Kruger and Alex Ross, with Doug Braithwaite, and I missed that book. I didn't read that when that came out, and then I'm reading Identity Crisis right now too, by Brad Meltzer, and that's I know that's a classic, and I should have already read it, but yeah, I'm more of a Marvel guy. I think more of my how I what I love about heroes, and the heroes that I gravitate to, are definitely more Marvel than I'd say would be DC. And not that I don't love DC. DC is I mean, they have some of the best characters ever, but there's something about just the groundedness of Marvel characters, and I am a huge X-Men fan. I think watching the '90s animated series, and also the first X-Men films, and then the first Spider-Man films, like that's kind of where I was first exposed to superheroes, and then that's what led me to want to get comics. So I was like, whoa, there's more stories of these characters. Like, wow, like that was so eye-opening as a small child. So that made everything really really exciting to dive deep into.
So I've always found that Marvel has what I would call like more colorful characters. Like Spider-Man got bit by a radioactive spider. That's like
Yeah.
wacky. You know, like the idea of
Right. Yeah.
mutants. That's wacky. You have characters like Captain America who are super soldiers, or Iron Man. They're kind of like Iron Man's maybe the exception because of the suit, but they're like street level. And when I think of DC, I think of Batman, and then of course the step up is Superman, but he can still be very mundane starting off. You get characters like Green Lantern, which becomes much more fantastical. But when I start thinking
Yeah.
about DC, I think they're in my mind, when I think about them, I think of more serious or like practical superheroes, as opposed to Marvel, where when I start coming up with the characters that I'm familiar with or that I read in the past, instantly it feels like a fantastic world. It
Yeah.
feels very, very fictional. So how did you get into writing in general? Did you start with novels? Did you start with comics? What drew you to the printed medium?
Yeah, I started writing really young, probably around 12 or 13, I actually started writing blogs, and I wrote blogs on
Wait, you were
games and
blogging at
on.
13?
Yeah, I was. I really was. And no one knew, of course, because I had this like anonymous account where I didn't have my name or anything, but I wanted to write about things that I loved, and I wanted to share that with people, and so I would do that. And one of the blogs I wrote at 13 on GameInformer.com um, got chosen as like one of the best blogs of the week for that week. And of course, no one knew I was 13, and I was just like, "Whoa! Like maybe like I'm okay at this. Maybe I can keep doing this because I was young and I was kind of figuring out what I'm good at." And so yeah, I started blogging more. And I started writing about things more. But the more I did it, I started to want to be more creative with my writing. It just kind of was like a natural extension. I got tired of just commenting on things. I wanted to be more creative about it, and I didn't really see an avenue to do that in the blogging world, or just by writing articles about stuff. And I've always loved storytelling, and the more that I uh, thought about it, and the more that I took in, and as more movies were coming out, and as I was getting older and thinking more about what impacts me as a person, um, and how certain movies and TV shows really made me think about my life and other people and things like that. They just really moved me emotionally, and challenged me intellectually. I wanted to do that. That's something I
Yeah,
wanted to do, and I and
you
I
didn't want to
I
comment on or criticize that from a
yeah,
somewhat more shallow standpoint, where the blogging world tends to really take root. A lot of blogging isn't really deep and introspective. It's a little bit more surface level analysis, or looking at it
yeah,
from like a very narrow point of view. Did I hear you wrote for Game
yeah.
Informer?
Yeah, I did. I wrote blogs on Game Informer. Yeah,
Gotcha, but
yeah.
you used like a pen name.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
It wasn't,
yeah.
some. If I looked it up now, would I find your articles?
I don't think so. I think they really changed their whole community system on that website. So I don't know if you would find them
Yeah, I
anymore.
mean it's been a while,
Um,
right?
yeah, yeah, it's been a really long time, but yeah, I I thought that talking about other people's stuff, I was like, I want people to talk about my stuff. Like that
Yeah,
kind
I
of
get
it kind of
that.
came down to that, where it was like I want people talking about me and my stories, and um I was thinking about, well, what could I do? And now I'm about 17, 18 years old, and I'm like, what could I do? What's even possible at this time? I finished high school, and I was going to go into college, and I was going into college, and um I thought, maybe I can take a crack at comics. Like, what would that look like? What kind of stories could I make? And I came up with the idea for seasons, and that's where it started. And now we're here. But so it's been about 4 or 5 years that I've been making comics, and it really it started with seasons, and it came from this desire to want to tell a story that made people think. And that's something that I love about stories, and that I love to do. So I wanted to do that, and
Yeah, I mean, I gotta
yeah,
say, this
so
isn't your first rodeo. You're 24 and you've already successfully published and crowdfunded several comics before this, including seasons 1 and 2, which we're looking forward to very much. You
yeah.
ran both of those on Kickstarter and Indiegogo,
Hmm.
and I think you said you're like into fulfillment with seasons. The books are getting there to you soon, and you're going to be shipping those
Yeah,
out because,
yeah.
man, I can't wait to read those both of those. Where can people catch up on seasons, and when can we expect season 3? Is that fall?
Yeah. Volume 3 fall. Yeah, so you can what I really encourage everyone to do, um if they're interested, is on the campaign for Manchild. There's actually a bundle called the Foxhole Comics Bundle, where you can get all of my books at a discounted price altogether. So if people want to read Seasons and get the hardcovers, you can do that. If you want to check it out and read it for free, you can read it on Webtoon. It's on there, and it's also on Macroverse, which is a new digital comics platform that I encourage everyone to check out. But you can read those, and yeah, and so yeah, if you want to check out Seasons, those are the places
Why
I'd
not go over to
recommend.
Substack? I mean, you have that blogging experience, and probably turn out things pretty regularly. You're 24. You've written 4 books now. It seems like you crank out content at a pretty regular pace. You should probably go over there, sign up, and see if you can start making money on Substack.
I don't know. Maybe I'm kind of leery on what might happen with Substack, but at the same time, um, I'm always open to other avenues. And I started. What's really interesting is most people don't. I don't think they. It used to be more popular, at least when I did it. But I've started releasing Seasons on my website for free for people to read.
Yep.
And I know a lot of people either just go straight to crowdfunding or, but like I was releasing it weekly for months and months. I'd release like a page or 2 pages a week, and it sounds kind of
Illustrated too.
archaic now. Hmm?
Illustrated as well.
Oh no, no, I worked with Anthony Gonzalez Clark. Yeah, he's the illustrator. But
Yeah, but when you
yeah,
said you were
I was
releasing it on your website, were you releasing illustrated pages?
yeah, I was
That's
releasing the
dope.
pages on the website. Yeah.
So
So
you had
it
like
was
you
all
figured out how to have a backlog, and then you couldn't release like
mhm.
2 or 3 pages to maintain an audience and to get people interested in reading sort of like a web comic style comic book. It's a smart way to build
Yeah,
up an
yeah.
audience. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. It was one of those things where, no one knows who you are, and it's like, well, how can I get people to look at my stuff and what you're creating? And it's like, well, give it out for free. And that's something
Yep. Yep.
we were
But also,
encouraged to do from.
if you're good at something, you got to get paid for it. You have to
Exactly. And
charge for it.
so
That's the
that's
thing.
what
I wanted to give away my
we start.
story for free, and people were like, "Don't do that. You got to pay for it. You got to make them pay for it."
Yeah, yeah, and see, that's something that as I've what we did is as Volume 2 was getting wrapped up and we were getting done with it, we decided to take down the pages on the website so that you can't read it for free anymore. You can still go to Webtoon and read it, but
Right.
we weren't going to do the method where we're putting out pages for free for people to read because we realized, we're giving a lot, and at the same time, it is really, really quality work. And so there was no point in our minds, people know us now, so there's no point to give it out for free anymore.
Right. The other way I've seen a lot of people do it is Patreon. I know,
Yeah.
at the very least, I know. I mean, there are several. Like I know Nicholas Mueller's doing it. I know Tyler is doing that. Tyler
Carpenter.
Sorg.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, the guy who does Drawn Talk. He's got a
Yeah.
Patreon right now where he's got subscribers and he's putting out like pages every 2 weeks, and then after a certain period of time, he's printing a book and sending it to his patrons, which is really neat. And then he's probably going to go crowdfund it. But that's another method by which you can maintain your audience if you wanted to like
Yeah.
release things in a webtoon or a web comic style format. Personally, I'm terrible at like consistently putting stuff out. I
Yeah.
am like intense bursts, and when I say bursts, I mean like for a week of creative
Hmm.
energy where I will crank out a script and a bunch of other stuff. And then it's
Mm.
long periods of drought while my mind develops the next thing. It mulls it over, and it's constantly
Yeah.
churning, in the back of my mind. But that also makes it, I guess in a way hard for me to put out content every week in a regular
Yeah.
way. If I built up a backlog, sure, I could just kind of dole that out while I'm building up the next big thing to get out of my head. But
I'm going to interrupt because Mo Biggs is making me laugh in the chat, and I thought you would all appreciate it.
of course, I would appreciate
So
it.
we're talking about Seasons before, because Will said Seasons is amazing, and we were talking about Seasons. So Mo said, people claim we don't have seasons in SoCal, but we have summer and eventually fall. And then Will says, eventually fall into the ocean. He said, surprisingly enough, the ground here is not like a giant cracker floating on top of the ocean. It does go all the way down. But Malibu might slide off eventually, though.
Mo says he's glad we're back. I'm glad we're back too. We missed you guys. We missed chatting with you. Running the campaign is definitely been a little bit trying. It's been mostly going on other people's shows and doing voice appearances. It becomes difficult to like host your own streams, but also go on all of the other people's streams and do the stuff you're supposed to be doing. Actually working with advertising and doing merch stuff and beating Garrett on the head while he works. Because someone has to do that, right? Anyway,
that's all Aaron.
Anyway,
I do know that.
You published Lifeline in 2018, right? Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that? I think that was the one.
Sounded really cool. I was
sounded
very
like
sad that I missed out on that one when I saw it.
I mean, we should probably back the get his whole catalog of stuff on this campaign.
Yes.
Yeah. On Manchild.
Because then we can each have our own copy of Seasons.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway,
but anyway, Lifeline sounded like really interesting. What gave you the idea for that?
Yeah.
How did you develop it, and how did you bring in everyone that worked on it?
Man, yeah, it was one of those experiments that as a creator, you don't know if it's going to work or not, because I knew I was going to be bringing in a lot of people, and I was worried that the more people that I would bring in, that maybe would mess up the story, or that it would be too jarring for audiences from going from one art style to the other. But that's what, and I even when I launched the campaign for it, and I let everyone know, like, this is an experiment. Like, this is something that as a writer and creator that I want to do, because I want to. I love embracing the medium, and like you said earlier, like using time for like the stories that I make. That's something.
Spin on that too,
yeah, and that's something that is so kind of interesting about comics, is how much time you can sit with it, and how much time you can, before you turn the page, if you just want to like absorb whatever is on that one page before you turn it. I mean, it's all up to you, the reader. Like with a movie, it just keeps going. You don't, yeah. So that's what I find really interesting about comics, and what I love to kind of mess with and to play around with. So with Lifeline, it tells this life story of this character who is not an important person at all. He's, he doesn't do anything grandiose. He's just a regular Midwestern guy, but you see his life story through the eyes of people that are closest to him. So in chapter 1, he's a young kid, young boy, and it's his father narrating the story, and it's this really kind of traumatic event that happens between him and his dad. And then in chapter 2, he's a teenager, and it's where he first runs into who will become his future wife. So he runs into her, and then by the time we get to chapter 3, he's hanging out with his best friend, and this is all told from, each chapter is told from the perspective of those characters. So you're learning all about him through the eyes of different people, and that's why the art style changes, because we're going we're taking a different perspective, a different look, using a different voice, but also we're going from a different decade to a different decade. So it's meant to give you this feel that times are changing, and that he is changing along with them, and that everything about this character is changing too. I mean, I really wanted to capture that sense that nothing really stays the same in a person's life. And that's, in terms of the people you meet, the places that you live, things like that. And it turned out to be, I mean, I love everything I've worked on, but it's one of those projects that I keep going back to, and I can't believe it actually worked. The more I look at it, and
that's incredible. It's almost like writing.
Yeah. And what's really,
one story.
Yeah, and what's really kind of meta about it all is, it's a one shot. I mean, it's a graphic novel, but it's a single standalone story, and it's this life story, and it's meant to give you this sense of you're reading the entire story, and by the time you finish it, you're like, man, that was kind of short, and it is meant to evoke that sense of life is short, and that's something that I wanted to do with this one shot, this one standalone graphic novel.
Mo Biggs wants to know if anyone else has received their copy of The Embrace today. I didn't
did
get it
not.
yet. I didn't know that they sent it out, but I didn't get mine. I did get my dream book with the creepy hand, Mo, and
Yes.
you can be sure I'm going to be looking at that to see if it lives up to your review, or you know, if Bancroft's ghostwriter is indeed as good as you say he was. Anyway, when looking at your current project, Manchild, you had to
Yeah.
have developed a big group of people for Lifeline. How did you put together the team for Manchild?
Yeah, so I think Lifeline really helped me be able to communicate with artists better, because I worked with 7 different artists on that book, and that was really interesting with Lifeline because I had to adapt to their strengths as artists. And so when I went to Manchild, I we have a really close knit team. It's just myself, the artist, and the letterer. But there's also variant cover artists for this book, and they're also people that have worked for Marvel, DC, and Image, and so they're really top dogs when it comes to people in the comic book industry. And with reaching out to all these people, it was one of those things that I felt served the story even better, because it is a story about fandom and about being a comic book fan. And I thought, I'm going to reach out to some of my favorite artists as a comic book fan and see what would happen if these guys want to be a part of it and what they could do with it. So
That's cool.
it was a matter of getting people at the right place at the right time in their schedule. And
Yep.
with Jay Mazar, the artist for the book, he does the pencils, the inks, and the colors. He does it all. And finding him was really tricky, because I needed someone that could not only give us this Silver Age kind of vintage retro style when it comes to comic book storytelling with his art, but since it is a story that is telling two tales simultaneously, he also had to have modern sensibilities with his art and his style. And I'm really big fans of people like Greg Smallwood and Darwin Cook and Chris Somney and artists like that. That when you and Steve Epting, like I mentioned earlier, who where you look at his work, their work, and it feels like they're classic 60s characters, but you're reading it today and it still is palatable for modern audiences to look at. So it was really funny because the artist Jay, he he hadn't done a superhero book or a superhero book like this before, really imaginative and bombastic and wacky too. It has that wacky element to it, which is really fun. But he was like, why are you like, why do you want me for this book? Because he had done a lot of his sequentials were for a crime noir thriller that he was working on. But it was that sense of that pulp, that classic feel and style that you get from older comics. And that's why I reached out to him, and I finally was just persistent enough to where he was like, okay, let's do this. And I wouldn't trade him for any other artist.
That's cool, man. I mean, when you find somebody that you can work with like that, and you know that that's the person that you can like just see yourself making multiple projects with.
Yeah.
You like hold on to them. You know what I mean? Like dig your claws in and never let them go. No, but seriously, why don't you tell us about Manchild? What's the setting and who's the protagonist? Because from what I understand, there are like two parallel stories going on here. One is about the Monarch Crier, who is a superhero, who is dressed like a butterfly. And you can tell us more actually about that. I'm just, on surface level. And on the other side, you have a character who's dealing with the loss of his comic book idol, essentially Stan Lee. So there are these two protagonists, and these stories are, I guess, going concurrently parallel to each other. How does this work?
Yeah.
I appreciate, because you did Seasons, you did Lifeline. I think you can do this. I have faith in you. You can do this this type of storytelling that isn't exactly linear. You know.
Creators Outlet
Yeah.
also has faith in you because he just backed Manchild.
All right.
Oh, thank you, Will, so much. That means so much, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Will's the best.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great question. And thank you for believing in me to tell this story because it's actually one of the most even though Lifeline and Seasons are difficult, I gotta say this was something that I didn't know if I could do. Like I was more confident in these books at the get go than I was with this one because this was the book that I did the most research on and that I had to really get in the frame of mind to tell this story. That so like it all started with the death of Stanley. After he passed away, I was really devastated by his passing because he was someone that had always been there as I grew up and as I saw, and he was just such an energetic, positive force in comics and in entertainment, and that's something that I don't think we have enough of, and we don't have enough people that we can look up to and really kind of idolize or at least appreciate in that way as much. And he was just such
He
a fun
embodied
guy,
an era. He embodied
Yeah,
an era of storytelling that at the time, I know looking back on it now, people have different opinions on it, especially because we're
right.
looking back through the modern lens at a time before the modern lens existed. But at the time when we were experiencing it, it was, like you said, the heroic age,
Right.
so many of us attach our emotional experience of those comics to Stan Lee. He was the icon, the
Yeah.
figurehead, the person that was responsible for that. So yeah, for a lot of people, losing him was like losing an era of their life, and that's what I'm getting coming through in just the preview pages that you have on the
Yeah.
Kickstarter.
Yeah, completely. And so like I after he passed, I started to do a lot more research into him and into what he created, how he created it. I also was really fascinated with the debate of Stanley or Jack Kirby and or Stanley and Steve Ditko, like who created what, how did they create it? I started to become more and more fascinated with that, and so I read about 3 or 4 biographies on Stanley and about the origin of Marvel Comics, and the more I looked into it, the more I was marinating on this idea of trying to look at the past and how to bring it to the modern day. And I didn't want to just do a throwback story because that's just not me as a writer. I didn't want to just be like, oh, ooh, nostalgia, like isn't it great? Like I wanted to do something that you could be nostalgic and you could have this sense of nostalgia, but then what do comics look like today, and what does fandom look like today compared to how it all started, and this kind of revolution or renaissance of the superhero. And so that's where the two stories started to come together, and I wanted to bring in this modern day story and this modern day character, Rufus Boston, because uh, it needed something to juxtapose the nostalgia. It needed to kind of ground the reader, and that's something that the more I thought about it, the more I was like, okay, like man child, like that's a contradiction in itself, and that's a juxtaposition in itself. And I thought that fit this idea of telling two stories because we're telling this super heroic, very masculine, classic traditional type of superhero story, and then we have the the man child, the guy who is this really kind of almost pathetic character, but someone that you can really empathize and sympathize with because he is someone that embodies the joy of being a kid, but he's still in his 30s. He's a virgin. He lives in his parents' basement. He's every stereotype that you can think of when it comes to someone being called a man child. But I thought I it it was
I'm
that
picking it up.
layered.
I'm seeing the
Yeah,
dichotomy.
yeah,
That's what you're doing. You're,
right.
you're running you're running like you said, a juxtaposition. They're foils
Yeah,
for each other. The monarch crier is, even though he's dressed as a butterfly, which can be traditionally taken as effeminate, you're
exactly,
offsetting that
exactly.
by making him a
Yeah,
superhero. a very
Yeah.
masculine superhero who's taking on, bad guys and robots and stuff, and you're juxtaposing that by a guy in the modern storyline, Rufus, right? Who
Yeah.
he's, a man, but he's also embodying all of the negative tropes of like the comic book fan.
Right.
You're
Right.
a very deliberate writer. You know what I mean when I say deliberate.
Hmm.
Every choice that you make is made consciously. Every name that
Yeah.
you give a person is given with a reason. Everything that you do, you are the most dangerous type of writer. If do you know what I mean? You're like, everything that you do
Yeah.
is intentional.
Yeah.
I'm the same kind
Right.
of writer. It takes one to know one. So
Yeah.
in
No, you are, but
in doing this, I know you're trying to say something, or at least
Yeah.
say something so that the reader can start thinking about it and come to
Yeah.
their own realizations, which, two readers might have entirely different interpretations of this. Is the and I know you probably don't want to give away too much of the story, but do
Yeah.
these worlds collide?
Yeah, so I will say it's not going to be something like you're going to see the Monarch Crier and Rufus talking to each other or something. Like that's not something that is going to happen. But they do collide in a different way. So that is a big mystery in the series, and something that I want the reader to discover is, wait, why is he telling these two stories at the same time? Like
Right?
what? Like
Are
why
they
am I
actually
reading these?
going on? Or is
Yeah,
the Monarch
like
Crier a comic book character? Are we reading
right,
his comic
right.
book while we're seeing Rufus live his life? It's unclear, and that's part of the excitement. It could be a very subversive thing to do, to be like, oh, the comic book's really about Rufus, but no, I don't think that's what you would do. I do have another
Yeah.
question. Why is the arch nemesis of the Monarch Crier named Professor Pilgrim?
Yeah.
What are
Well,
you going for with that name, Pilgrim?
that's a great question, man. Yeah, like his bio says, he's a super tech genius who has his own island in the North Pacific, and he is building really his own society, and he's pioneering. He is a pilgrim. He's pioneering this new place for him and also other people, and we'll find out more about what that is as we continue with the series. But he is trying to create a new society that is different than the modern world. So it's
So once again,
it's him,
we're calling back to the past. The
right?
pilgrims, the settlers that came to the New World, but we're juxtaposing that with a more modern event, and yet it's an echo of what happened before. Just like with Rufus, he is both a child and indulging in his childhood, but a man. And the book is going to
Yeah,
see him hopefully transition, go through a metamorphosis, much like, a butterfly goes through a metamorphosis to become more than who he is at the beginning of the book by the end of the book. And
yeah,
that's going to have like, well, he's a man child, then what does he become? Does he become a man? And what's the differentiation between the two? Do you think that this could at all be dangerous? Do you know what I mean by that? Like, I called you a dangerous writer. I mean it because you have a brain,
yeah,
and you have a way of talking about things and a way of looking at things that lends itself to commentary. And your commentary
yeah.
can be misinterpreted. So is
Completely.
this at all
Yeah,
dangerous? Because you are playing with tropes, and you're playing with some
yeah.
of people will get upset by portrayals like this, even if they are the sympathetic main character. Like, this could
Right.
ruffle some feathers. I'm not saying that that's a important thing, but you've definitely thought about that, right?
Yeah, I'm kind of one of those people that I really do want the reader to embrace the writing and the story as much as possible, to where they will whatever interpretation or whatever outlook that by the end of the first issue or the series that they come up with, like I am completely fine with whatever that is, because I know what I'm trying to say as a writer, or at least I know what the questions I'm trying to ask as a writer. And that's some of the,
Hmm.
you don't have to answer for the reader, but I do think
Right.
it's really important to have the reader start asking those questions, and you want to pose
Right.
those for the reader to ask. So I like, I do like I said, making people think, and I really like people that can look at a story and see themselves in it, but also maybe see themselves in these characters that maybe either helps inspire them, to be better than who they are, or it makes them go, I don't want to be that, I
Right.
want to
The
be
problem
this
with a lot
person.
of
Yeah.
fiction, when you give people a protagonist, and this lends to the whole people saying, I don't see myself in modern comics, or I don't
Hmm.
see myself represented in media.
Right.
A lot of people, when they look at a protagonist, they associate with a protagonist, or even a character in a work of entertainment. They find
Yeah.
some sort of commonality and they latch onto that, and that person, that character becomes a stand-in for that person
Hmm.
because they see themselves so much associated with that character, that fictional thing. Whatever
Yeah.
happens to that character might as well be happening to them. And right
Yeah.
now in comic books,
Totally.
we have a schismatic culture where a
Hmm.
lot of comic book fans, and I think that you touch on this when you talk about all of the negative tropes, like the most negative tropes. You have a lot of comic book fans who feel maybe like this classical age of comics, the heroic age, is a bygone era that
Yeah.
they long for, much like a man child longs for their childhood.
Yeah.
And at the same time, there is another part of the comic book culture that denigrates that because comic books are no longer that way. They are now more modern and more concerned with a more modern audience. So,
Yeah.
in taking on this particular theme, you have to be consciously picking a potentially very touchy subject for a comic book itself. It would be one thing
Yeah.
for you to make a movie about this, because then you'd be talking to a movie going audience about what's going on in comics. But you're also
Yeah.
talking to, instead, you're talking to the comic book reading audience about what's
Hmm.
going on in comics. And to throw the cherry on top, you're crowdfunding this. So you're talking to the crowdfunding indie comic book audience about something that's going on, motivating people
Yeah.
who don't necessarily feel like that heroic age is still present in comic books today, and something that they hearken for, something that they yearn for, which
Yeah.
gets them called man children by a lot of people. So what I'm saying is,
Yeah.
like, you're very
Yeah.
well aware of meta. We saw it in Lifeline. We saw you do that in Lifeline. So
Yeah.
you're posing questions, and I know you don't want to give too much away, but what is one of the central questions, like the thesis underneath a work like this? Because as a writer with
Yeah.
intent, you have a thesis. We know you do.
The the core of what the story is wanting to ask the reader to look at comics over the years and have them ask themselves, have they changed for the better or for the worse, for society or culture? And I wanted to start at a place like the Silver Age, or the Marvel Age of comics, and start there and look at this time when everything was so imaginative, and there was so much wonder, and there was a sense of looking to heroes for inspiration. And I want them to look at that and then get thrust into the modern day, look at a modern day comic book fan, and I want them to go, what happened? What is this supposed to be? And is it for the better or for the worse? And that's a big question that I struggle with, and I want everyone to know, when it comes to Rufus Boston, he is everything that I am when it comes to loving comics. And if like if you look at Rufus and you see yourself and you feel maybe offended, like you're gonna like you see a lot of me in that character. And that's something that
It
I wanted
depends
to
upon
put.
the
I
part
want,
that you're looking at. That's the
yeah,
danger. People look at a
yeah,
character and they see a part of themselves that's undeniable. Then when you look at the
hmm,
comprehensive whole of that character, if other things are caricatures, they might feel made fun of. And it's only because
right,
they themselves have related to the character. They've made the
yeah,
classical literary choice to subsume the character. That isn't necessarily
hmm,
what was intended to do. I don't know if let's just say a woman would see themselves in Rufus the way that
hmm,
a straight white, cis comic book fan would.
right,
That
right,
the point is that you're giving a unspoken literary cue to a reader to say, hey, this is you. You're supposed to see
hmm,
yourself in this. And so you're
yeah,
right. Rufus, what he loves about comics, his love of comics, and it's very clear that you have a very deep seated understanding and love of comics just by the
yeah,
interview that we've had so far. You were able to not only name the comic, but the era, the other contemporaries of the creator in that era, and what it was about the era that you fell in love with when you started reading comic books. When you talked about Captain America, you
hmm,
talked about everything about that. You knew it all. So clearly, that element of Rufus is something of yourself that's in that character. All of the
yeah,
other things, the classical tropes that would be by modern standards considered negative characteristics or negative character traits, are they
hmm,
there because of insecurity, or are they there to address? Are you creating a character like a straw man against which to bounce this thesis to say, hey, what happened? Look at the character that it created. Or is this
hmm,
a, regardless of these traits, look what he overcomes? Like, this is my. I love this kind of discussion because when I meet a writer like
yeah,
you who's writing more than a comic book, and you're writing the type of social commentary that we need,
mm,
because it's there, you can sense it, but it's not overtly spoken. If it's done carefully, consciously, and like I said, you're the type of writer who's very conscious with what they're doing, it can be very
yeah,
effective. How much of Rufus is intended to be authentic, and how much of him is intended to be a stand-in or a symbol, like
hmm,
a semiotic symbol for comic book culture or the comic book reader of a certain type.
yeah. Um, he's definitely a vessel. I'll say that of comic book culture of today, and of a specific type. The important thing that I want readers to understand with him is how Rufus, might react to things, or his thoughts on what comic books are, depending on if you think he is someone that is a negative person to not aspire to, or to not to, oh, I wouldn't be his friend. Um, but maybe you would, depending on who you are as a
Well, he
person.
loves
Would
comics.
you,
He has
yeah,
the same love of comics that you do. It's
right, right.
the characteristics that might turn you off to Rufus. Then the reader has to
Yeah,
ask themselves why those things are turnoffs. Like there's a lot going on
exactly.
here for the interplay between the text and the audience. You have this
Yeah.
great
And
text. You literally have two different texts present in your text. You have the one story with the monarch. You have the other story with
yeah,
Rufus. So you have a text that is separated into two texts. Then you have the subtext underneath both of those texts. The story about Rufus has meaning, and the story about the monarch has meaning. Both of those subtexts mirror each other, and each one has an individual context, the world that the monarch embodies and or inhabits and the one that Rufus inhabits. And those are two different times. You're juxtaposing classical, heroic age setting, where women and men sit down at the diner and like just exactly what you show in the segment from the monarch, to this other setting where Rufus works in the shopping mall at the returns checkout counter. Like those two things don't exist in the same universe. They're mirrors and reflections of each other. So you've taken on a very ambitious thing, and just like with Lifeline, when I looked at it, I was like, can he pull this off? And I haven't read it, but from what I hear, yes, you did. It's one of the reasons I don't want to get my hands on it. Because you're one of those types of writers who's pushing the envelope like that. Anyone can write a comic book which has a sequential narrative to it. It's done in sequential art fashion, but the chronology is left to right. This happens, then this happens, and this happens. It's entirely narrative sequence. You've decided to not do that, to not follow a chronological progression, so much as to tell two stories that mirror each other about two characters that are in a fundamental way connected, because Rufus loves and appreciates this culture that this character inhabits. And so whatever we see happen to this character is going to be reflected on Rufus. I'm intrigued by how you decided to structure this story. And I can't say enough how valuable I think something like this could be to people, to get a deeper appreciation of the type of conversation that can be had between the writer and the audience in a book when only one person is doing the act of reading. You've already said the thing, but it becomes a conversation because you keep going back to the text and asking questions.
I want people to read it and to hit up their friend and go, have you read this? Like, what do you think he's trying to say? Or like, what is this doing? And then that breeds a conversation between those two people. And hopefully that will breed a bigger conversation about that. And the way that I think people are going to approach this, I mean, it is a celebration more than anything, and I want people to know that this is a celebration of comics
you call it a love letter to Stan Lee.
Yeah, completely, and it is a tribute and an homage to what he was able to do and what he and Kirby and Ditko were able to do at that period of time, and looking back at that and appreciating it for what it's done and how long it's affected people over generations and generations, and how it affects Rufus. That scene where his version of Stan Lee passes away, that's exactly what happened to me. And that's I was at work and I worked in a mall, and I was busy doing my thing. People were calling me and texting me, trying to tell me that that Stan Lee passed away. And I look at my phone, and then I see someone's calling me after all these calls and texts, and it was just like, what? It was this story, the first issue is called The Death of the Superhero. And that's something that is being, held up for people to look at Stan Lee and look at this era of comics and to go, when he passed away, we lost something. We lost something. We lost an era, like you said. And it's really, really interesting with going back to the structure of the story, because I want people to read it, and it's meant to feel like when you wake up in the morning, you go to your day job, you work, and you come home, you sit on the couch or in your bed or wherever at your desk, you read a comic or you watch a movie or you do something. That's what this story is like, because you're going to be with this guy at work, and then you're going to turn the page and then you're in the superhero world and you're being absorbed in this narrative, and then you turn the page and you're back in reality. And that's the same exact thing that happens to us as fans and as people that consume stories. Is we're completely in absorbed in reality, and then we get taken to this other place, and then after the movie's over, the comic's done, bam, you're back to reality again.
Back to
And
reality. Oh, there goes gravity. Yeah. So
Karaoke was last night.
what's that? I should have done that last night. I'm not
Should've done
fast
that.
enough though. We could have slowed it down to half speed and maybe been able to do that. But I don't think so. So 22 pages, 6 issues.
yeah,
You're killing me with the drawing this out. Do you know what I mean? This is the type of thing Mo said it earlier. He's surprised we didn't whip out a thesis paper.
yeah,
This is the type of story that does become, I don't want to say it's a diatribe because I don't know if it's scathing or not. It could be a introspective, because you said so much of your love of comics is in Rufus, and it's almost like you've heaped all of the stereotypes on top to be like, well, if I love comics, why can't I also have all of these things hanging on the character, the protagonist as well? Is Rufus the protagonist?
he is. I mean, he is.
Okay.
He is the main character in the modern day story. And what hasn't been shown yet visually, but I do mention in the campaign, is Rufus has his friends. He has his inner circle of friends that he hangs out with. And these people are going to have conversations that that modern comic book fans have in the real world about certain things. And there is a conversation in the first issue.
You really are going there.
Oh yeah, yeah. And there's
You are brave. You are a brave
There's a-
man making an indie comic in crowdfunding about a character who loves the golden age of Marvel, a bygone era, who longs for comic books the way comic books used to be, who himself might be a indie creator on Indiegogo. You know what I mean? This this is why I'm saying 22 pages, great. 6 issues? I have to wait until 6 issues to get the complete story? Do it all now! I want to hear this thesis now! How long between issues?
Yeah, so what's really great about this is I'm writing the very final issue right now. So I have issues 2, 3, 4, and 5 all written, all ready to go. So I'm at the end of it, and after issue 1 funds and we fulfill it, we're going to go into issue 2 as soon as possible.
Right away. Okay.
So everything's going to be
3
ready.
months.
Everything's going to be ready to go, because I really do want a quick turnaround time.
That's
and
why you did seasons the way that you did. So yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Because it's seasonal. It's quarterly, right? Spring, summer, fall, winter. So you got the whole hiccups with production and everything out of the way, figuring out how to do the books so that you can do them every
Right.
3 months. So this book will probably hit seasonally as well, giving yourself enough time for the funding of it, which is a month, the printing of it, and the fulfillment of it. So is it fair to say 4 issues a year? Or do you want to go faster than that?
I think four would be a really good number. That's something that
Yes,
I'm
creators
hoping
outlet.
for. So yeah, either if I can get out all 6 issues by the end of or the middle of 2023 or the beginning of 2023, that would be
Yeah,
the ideal.
you've got
Have
18 months. Sure.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, and it really does depend on how well the campaigns do and how well we're able to speed everything up. If
I want to read the scripts.
Yeah. So
Legit,
it's
throw a tier on there called "Send me the scripts" and I'll back that tier. I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
I'm seriously intrigued, and I have a lot of respect for you as a writer. And
Well,
that's
thank you,
not
man.
something that I say to people.
It's true.
yeah.
Yeah, I mostly hate everything everyone does. But the fact that you're willing to go here, but you're willing to go here in a way that, like you said, it is a introspective love letter to both that era and to comic book fans
Yeah.
of that era. but it's also an
Yeah.
internal examination of that and what works and what doesn't work of that. That is just insanely brave right now. And I think that that's worth, you didn't, when I came into this, when I was looking at this, I was like, I don't know, man. He might not be, he might be just going into this with the whole, let's stir the pot, see what happens, see how much noise we can make, like get a whole bunch of negative attention and then put out a bigger book. I don't know. I did not know about where you stood on this when I went into it, but now I got to say I have to read this. Which is why I was like, give me all the scripts, give them all to me now. I want to read this, like legitimately.
Yeah, man.
Let's get you funded.
Well, thank you.
You've got how many? 46 hours. You got any other
That's
shows
right,
after
46
this?
hours. Yeah, I'm gonna be on Comics and Coffee with Don Chin on
Don
Wednesday.
Chin, he's great.
Yeah,
Don is fantastic.
yeah,
Tell him I said
and
hi.
I will, and tomorrow I'm gonna be on Indie Comics Relay with Keith and Johnny C.
Okay.
So I'm excited to be on there. So yeah, I got a couple, a couple more shows, but man, I'm down to the wire. I'm nervous about it. I really hope that we can hit funding. But we'll
He's not that far
see.
off, right? He's just has to hit 5K
Less than that
because we just got a couple
he's-
backers.
Yeah, you're up to 141 backers, $4,194.
So
you're
let's say
under 500.
let's say 4,200. So he's got 800 to go.
No, it's
45
4,500 is the
It's
goal.
45.
Yeah.
Oh,
No,
you're
it's
there,
300.
dude. You got $300 in 46 hours. Yeah, 2 days. You can do that. The one thing that I was surprised about, though, and I got to say, $10 basic tier. Like just the book, free shipping, highly appreciated because honestly, paying for shipping on a $22 book where the shipping is half the cost of the book would not have gotten my support. I would have been like, nope, forget it. Not worth my time. As much as it sounds cool, 22 pages is already a thin book. I have to pay shipping on top of that. I'm going to pass. So the free shipping was a very good idea. $10
Thank you.
tier is small. Hard to hit $4,500 on the back of a $10 book. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah,
both
it was
ambitious and slightly, in my opinion, somewhat impractical with a question mark.
Yeah. I with the variant covers, and the variant covers are more expensive, and so I wanted the basic book to be highly affordable because I really do want as many people as possible to read it. But then if they want, a really cool cover by some of their favorite artists, then they can get that, and they can pay a little more. It's still all free shipping, but I didn't want people to just get a 22 page, like you said, it's a thin book, and pay $25 for it. I wanted people
Right.
to
Well, no, $10
look at it and
was the
go,
right. You couldn't go higher than 10. The 50-cent
Yeah,
page,
yeah.
page limit is there. If you went over 50 cents a page, people would just automatically skip it unless they're huge fans of yours. Like pushing 50 cents
yeah,
a page.
exactly.
You can't do that. In fact, most people are getting it under that these days. We're gonna have to be looking at 30 cents a page from now on with the rate that some people
Yeah.
are trying to get value for their books, because crowdfunding is an ongoing game, my man. You know what I mean? Like everyone's trying
Oh, yeah,
to get better and
it
better
is.
and better at it. So we're always raising the bar on each other. And whereas last year you could have gotten away with a 24-page book, with $5 shipping at $25, you can't do that anymore. You will not succeed. There are too many people in the race for crowdfunding that are doing better deals and doing smarter moves. But like I said, free shipping, well done. Still maintaining that, under 50 cents a page threshold, well done. So like you're still in the race by quite a margin. And with a book like this, the cerebral effort that you've put in here, because this was thought out, that's what I really am interested in. I don't know how many
Thank
other
you.
people I'm haranguing on this at this point. You know what I mean? Like I really am hammering on this dude has something to say. Have other
he's, like,
people
thank
throwing
you,
away
man.
all the other questions.
just completely gone.
prompts, just-
have other people been talking about that, or has it been mostly like what about the Butterfly Man?
Yeah, I gotta say, this has been my favorite interview that I've done because I really feel like you get it. And a lot of the people that I've spoken to, and of course it does have a lot of window dressing to the book. I mean,
That's the point
people
of the
look at it.
text. Yeah, you've
Yeah,
got to
yeah,
obscure the
exactly.
subtext with an enjoyable thing. That's why the context is important. You create two very
Yeah,
relevant contexts. One that's a little
yeah.
bit grayer and duller, but it's the one we're familiar with, and one that's a little bit
Hmm.
more exciting and fantastical, the golden age superhero that we're also familiar with, but it's the one we want to live in. So it's
Yeah,
smart.
yeah,
I hate him. He's
yeah.
good.
No.
That's a compliment.
He makes
As
me
soon
mad.
Yeah.
Writers don't make me mad. They don't. Artists make me mad, but in general, writers don't make me mad. You make me mad.
Oh man. Well,
Which
dude,
is a good
we
thing.
need to buddy up on a book and make everyone else mad, and make everyone just,
Thank you, Nico.
Thanks,
We
Mo.
appreciate
Appreciate
that.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Mo. That means a lot, dude. Man,
Yeah.
yeah, I just, I want to say, like, I am really coming, and I want everyone to know this. I'm really coming from a place of sincerity with this story, and I'm coming from a place that, as a comic book fan, I've seen the tides change, and I've seen that schism and of fandom, and it is something that I'm really fascinated with just as an observer. I'm not picking sides or anything. I'm just looking at it and going, what happened? And what's
Yeah, that's
going on
what I'm
here?
hearing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's
That's really
almost at the
where I'm.
same time, somewhat from what I'm hearing from you and what I'm sensing about the book, it's almost a lament. It's
Yeah,
almost a lament for where we're at this point.
Like, how did we
Yeah,
get
how did we
yeah.
get here? It's kind of a shame. So what I'm hoping is that there's a encouraging or hopeful resolution to it, which is why I want to know the
Yeah,
arc that Rufus goes through. Like, he obviously has a
yeah.
character arc. I want to know his transformation. I mean, it's a freaking butterfly, for Christ's sake. The subtext is right there. It's punching you
It
in the
is.
face, going, "This is about metamorphosis."
It really, yeah, yeah, and I hope people will get that, because I gotta say, I tried to make it as apparent as possible, and as someone who loves change. I mean, Seasons is about change. Lifeline is about change.
Lifeline's about
This
change.
is
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the uh the third act in my trilogy here of, like, what I'm talking about when it comes to change, and writing about change, and that's what interests me as a writer. It might be like, oh, that's all he writes about, but I think everyone can tell you that each book I've done is completely different. RJ actually said, Critical Blast, when I was on with him, he said, I never would have thought you would be writing something like this, because to him, it was so completely removed from Seasons and other things that I've done, that he was like, where did this come from? Like this very traditional type of superhero story. And I really appreciated that as a creator, because for me, it was someone that was looking at what I'm doing and going, "Oh, he's not predictable," and that's
Right.
something I
You
don't
may
want to be
be
predictable.
you may be
Yeah.
tackling the same themes, but you're hitting them from
Hmm.
such different angles that it's a fresh
Yeah.
sound every time, that it feels like a new exploration of that subject, even if it happens to be a core grounded subject that you address. Look, the way you talk about change is the way I talk about war. Like, war is my subject. I will always be talking about war. You will
Yeah.
always be examining change. I'm sure there are other things that you want to look at, but it's such a significant part of it that your writing will have that element to it. You will always be talking
Yeah.
about, like, a journey, or you'll be talking about
Yeah.
the development of something, or how something
Yeah.
goes from one place to another. Like, it'll be about
looking at it through that lens?
yeah. There'll be a
Yeah.
characteristic of that to his stories. Even if he decides to like just tell a fantasy story, there will be an examination of the character, his arc, his development, and that will play a very important part of the story. So the way that, you've approached, because change is such a fascinating subject, you really can't escape it in storytelling,
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's literally beginning, middle, end, right?
That's
2
basically
legs,
a
3
story.
legs,
Yeah.
2 legs, 4
Yeah.
legs, 2 legs, 3 legs.
Yeah.
That whole thing.
The only thing constant is change.
Yeah. So, what challenges have you faced crowdfunding?
Wow. I gotta say, I thought this being my fourth campaign that it would be a little easier, but it's not. This is actually one of the hardest campaigns that I've done, that I've pushed really, really hard. What's really interesting about this campaign is I have the most backers that I've ever had for any of my books, but we're not at the goal yet. And so I find that really fascinating. And I know it's because partially I've all I've done is graphic novels, so the book is a higher price. So we probably would have been there already, maybe if this was a graphic novel or if it was, more expensive. But like we said, like we talked
That
about,
one. That last
yeah,
part.
yeah,
The more expensive
right,
part.
right,
I want to
right,
know why you're doing it episodically, though. Like, if you've written it all,
yeah.
why don't you just compile it and do it as a treatise? Because I'm wondering,
Well,
are you going to
yeah,
compile this into a trade at some point? I think the answer is yes. It would be, in my opinion, somewhat of a missed opportunity to put the entire thing into
right,
one volume and say, look, boomf, comic book. This is what I feel. This is
yeah,
what I think about comics. This is what I have to say
yeah,
about modern comics. That's why I love graphic novels or trades. It's a mic
yeah.
drop. You get to say, this is what I
Hmm.
had to say. So why 6 issues? Why episodic?
Yeah, it's well, partially it really does come to logistics and also my needing to um break things up with my own schedule and between seasons and man-child and doing the two. Um but also it's because I wanted to give people that authentic experience of reading a single issue like you'd be reading
Yeah,
a
it's
Stan
a
Lee
love letter to
comic.
comic
Yeah.
books, so it's going to be done
Yeah.
like a comic book, Aaron. What's wrong with you? He's
You
so
know,
he's
I
so
want,
meta. He's got to
yeah.
do it meta, right? Yeah. Will you do a trade though,
And
so I can hand it to my friends and go, look at what
I
this guy has to say about comic books?
what I would love to do, my dream for this book at the very end would be to do like a Marvel Masterworks version. So it'd be like a hardcover
Oh,
dust
the
jacket.
big,
Yeah, yeah, or yeah, Treasury Edition. It
Treasury
could
edition. That's what I was thinking
yeah,
of. Yeah.
one of those things. What I think would be really cool would be if I could release these like they are the modern kind of version, but then also do like a newsprint run of them where you know you have both versions, so you both have the real world version and then you have the vintage version. So that would be something that I would like to do. But yeah,
Will, I think he's got the highest number of backers because people have had a taste of his writing and they know that it's quality and that he's turned out 3 projects, so it's a pretty reliable thing that he's going to deliver. I think the reason that he hasn't hit his goal, I don't know what your goals were in the past. $4,500 doesn't seem too high on Kickstarter. 5K is usually like the solid, gotta hit this, make this book.
yeah,
It's the fact that it's $10, and for a lot of people who are going to give you the first time go because they didn't get Seasons or Lifeline or whatever, they're going to get the basic tier. They're not going to get, oh, I want all the cool covers. They're just going to get the
yeah,
book. So Creators Outlet Will,
yeah.
I think the reason that he's having a little bit of that trepidation of I'm not sure if I'm going to get there is because he's got a $10 book. But I think that you're really playing into that with it's 22 pages because it's going to be a comic book. And I'm going to write my love
Yeah.
letter to comics about the current state of affairs in comics because I'm a comic fan writing a book about comics fans. And I'm going to do the comic book like a comic book is done. So yeah, I think that's where you're
Yeah.
at. I'm on board, though. I want to see this thing succeed, so I'm going to get behind it and I'm going
Thank
to push
you.
it a little bit.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate that.
I can't wait to read seasons.
got the
Though.
cool
Like, that's the
cover.
thing. I gotta read seasons. So and see if that
for
makes
sure.
me equally mad. I mean, of course, I'm also just hyping this thing up a lot in my mind. So that's what I do. I go off to the races with something. I get an idea in my head. I'm like, that's got to be what it is. It might not be. I'm pretty sure it is, but it might not be. When I read seasons, I'll know. I'll know for sure if you're capable of the type of writing I imagine that you are. But I have a great
Thank you,
imagination.
man.
So
Yeah, I mean, you're making me you're putting the pressure on, right now. I'm like, oh gee, like I
yeah,
hope
but
he
look at how
likes what I've
cool you are under
what I've
pressure,
done.
though,
Yeah,
right? You're
you
still
say
just
no one
like,
would
yeah,
know.
you're like nobody would know at all.
Yeah.
You've got that. You've got a very calm demeanor. I really like that. It's back. Reminds me back when comic book creators were also as mysterious and cool as the worlds the books themselves were from. Like when you caught a glimpse behind the curtain at the comic book making process. You remember when we used to take the tour of Marvel with Stan? Like when he did the whole like take a look inside my writer's room, that whole thing, and it was like we were in Disneyland. There was magic there, but
Yeah.
creators were mysterious, and you didn't know about a lot about them, and they were almost celebrity. You have the same demeanor, you have the same outward cool facing demeanor where it's like, oh, I wonder about this guy. He's a little bit mysterious. I wonder what's going on inside that head. So
Oh, thanks, man.
Mo's back. He says, I know he wants to put out a standard comic in the spirit of classical comics, but even in the old days, there was a time to slap your giant sized man thing on the table. And that is what I am all about. I am all about dropping my man thing on the table with my books. Wow, I just realized how that
I
sounded.
was gonna say, I'm like, and by that he means
Comic book.
Yeah.
Big, oversized comic book. Even mine, though. Even mine's only 60 story pages and the first two together. So you could actually do a hardcover trade because you'd be at like 132 pages,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it
that's a
would-
good size. You could definitely do a hardcover, perfect bound, dust jacketed version. I'd pay for that. Absolutely. So I could throw
Yeah.
it at people. Yeah. 100%.
so. Aaron's a big
Definitely.
fan of like looking at comics that he's backed and figuring out like,
How to use them as weapons.
yeah, would this hurt someone if I threw it at them, or should I
Yeah.
just keep this on my shelf?
Does getting hit with it hurt you more than getting hit with the writing?
You have like a file cabinet where you have names of different people with the specific comic that you want to throw at them.
He's like, I don't, but
You're
I
like-
will.
yeah. You're like,
I need
okay,
to
when
hit
you get
this guy with more
man-child.
Grant Morrison. Yeah, right?
Yeah. When you get man-child, you'll be like flipping through the file cabinet. You'll be like, Chad, like this one's for
This
him.
is why I've got to get like 5 or 6 copies, right? So I have
Right.
In case he
multiple.
gets blood on
'cause-
some of
well,
them.
no, I'm definitely going to have like 5 or 6 people that I'm going to be like, he has to read this. That's assault him with it. Yeah. So
No assault.
no assault. No.
Just
no assault.
No, it's all, yeah.
Will this be going to Indiegogo? You did seasons 1 and 2 on
Yeah.
Kickstarter and Indiegogo, right?
Yeah. So it's one of those things where I want it to, but I really, it will go to Indiegogo if we fund, like I mean, it won't go if we're just kind of out in the open here, but it will be a lot more streamlined, and I think it's something that I would do before I launched issue 2, or it would be at the same time I launched issue 2. So it would be quite a few, months.
So you can
it'd be
put
like,
it in demand on Indiegogo if you fund on Kickstarter.
yeah, I could.
What I mean
definitely
is, you're
do
not.
that.
Are you going to run a separate campaign on Indiegogo?
Yeah,
Because
I like doing
crowdfunding
that.
Takes
Yeah.
a lot of interfacing.
Yeah, I kind of prefer doing a separate campaign just because I really do like trying to interact with the audience as much as possible, and I don't want to just kind of I know if I just did in demand I wouldn't push it as much, and when it's a campaign it helps me to get in that mode of wanting to talk to more people about it, because we have to hit a certain goal rather than just having it kind of sit there. So it probably would be a campaign.
And what would you want out of that campaign? Like, what kind of goal would you estimate you would be aiming for?
I would just do the $500 one, and really just get people in who's a part of that audience, to be a part of it, because there again, and it's the reason I brought seasons to Indiegogo, where there are a lot of people that don't do Kickstarter, which is their decision. That's cool, but so I wanted to do something, put it on Indiegogo, and I kind of wanted to see like how would it do, on Indiegogo. Like with seasons, I was like, I was just curious, really, to see how it was, and if I liked Indiegogo more than Kickstarter, or how all that worked. What I really love about Kickstarter is I love how they actually have an app that for your phone. It just makes things a lot easier for me as a backer and as someone who's looking at comics, to just go on my phone, go on the app, and like scroll through them. And I really wish Indiegogo had something like that, because
That would be
I
cool.
don't I don't really go on my laptop or my desktop and do a lot of comic book searching. I usually do it on my phone, whether that's on eBay or on Kickstarter, or just really quick things that I like to do. So that's something that I feel like Kickstarter kind of has above Indiegogo in that regard. It's a lot.
Yeah, I
and it's,
haven't seen it.
Yeah.
I haven't even seen the app. I'm not good
I
at
have the app.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm in
She
shock.
doesn't put those on my phone.
No.
I tend to
You're
lean
not allowed
towards
to
Indiegogo.
do that.
Well, it's just because then he asks me how it works, and it's just easier
Yeah.
to let him use his computer because that he knows how it works.
I tend to lean more towards Indiegogo for a couple of like the interface reasons, like being able to put images on the perk tiers,
Yeah.
so that people can
Yeah.
associate what's
Yeah.
in the image with the tier itself. The fact that instead of it being like this teeny tiny scroll where I have to click on it to read about the thing, then like go
Right.
back.
Right.
That the fact that you can back more than once, so you can get multiple copies or different tiers. Like if I want just the basic tier, but then I also want to get a spare cover tier, I can
Yeah.
back multiple times. The thing Kickstarter has that Indiegogo doesn't have is change your pledge. Like
Yeah.
you'd have to
Yeah.
cancel on
Yeah.
Indiegogo to get a new one. Like the more I look at these things, because we've really done a lot of looking at
Yes.
these platforms, because it's just like I get.
Yeah.
I do lean more towards Indiegogo, but there are functionalities on Kickstarter that I prefer. One, the algorithm; two, that change your pledge; and three, now that I know there's an app, I got to look at how different the app is than the website on the computer. Also, the way that they run pre-launch on Indiegogo, I think, is better
Yes,
than the
I
way they
agree.
run pre-launch on Kickstarter. It's like these two things could learn a lot from each other, but then they'd be the same platform,
Yeah. And I do want people to know, that if you do pick a cover for Manchild, like if you're like, okay, I want the Tom Riley cover or the Tony Harris cover, but I also want this other cover. We do have add-ons for this campaign, so you can get both covers, that you want, and that makes it easier for people to decide, which ones they want.
I can get, I can back it on my own.
Sorry, we're now arguing over.
We're
got
arguing.
wrong
The
cover.
Tony Harris covers. The Harris cover's fantastic.
Yes.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
my favorite one is the Welby. I gotta say, like I said earlier, when we were backstage, anything with like fire, like brilliant oranges, reds, and yellows, fall colors,
Even if it's
get
not
me.
actual.
And then you were like, yeah, but it's butterflies. I was like, oh my god, that's even better. It's an explosion of insects, so I get to have that now. And I love the silhouette. Like everything about that cover, the Welby cover, is no pun intended, absolute fire. But I am gonna get the
Thanks,
other
man.
cover as well, because it's a beautiful painted cover.
Yeah, actually,
Any original art by any chance that you would ever consider
Well-
putting up?
Well, you can get original art from the comic, so you can get original pages, and you can also get an original sketch by Jay Mazar, the artist. So those are available. I
Are
do
those as
have.
add-ons or as tiers?
You can get those as tiers. Yeah,
Okay, cool.
yeah. And I do
I
have.
see.
So like all the variant covers are add-ons. So if you do want a variant cover, you can just add those on to whichever tier that you choose. So you'll get 2 copies of the book. You'll get the signed edition of the book with the standard J. Mazur cover, and then you can get a variant cover too.
Tell me about the drawn in.
Yeah. I've done this with all my previous campaigns where people we draw their likeness into the book. We try to make it to where you won't probably be a main character, but you will be someone that might have a line of dialogue or that is, in the vicinity or part of an important scene in the story. It really does depend on where we're at with the issue and how much art's already been done, so that kind of does depend, but because Jay does draw traditionally, and I wouldn't want to have him to change a whole page just to put in a new put a new face in, but yeah, like you can get drawn into the first issue of Man-Child with this campaign. And, you could be in Uncle Chester's comic shop, or you could be at work with Rufus. It just depends on, if you want a line of dialogue or if you want, something specific, I'm always happy to work with people. And
that's cool.
It's, we have this really great scene in Volume 2 of Seasons where a character is looking at a photo, and it's a really tragic event that has happened, and he looks at the photo, and the photo is a backer. It's one of the backers of the campaign. So he's looking at that person that backed the book, and it was one of those cool things that we put in there.
Killed off before he even got alive. Already dead. In the photo.
Right.
Tragic event. Like, he's dead before the book started. Yeah. I don't know. I'm just making a conjecture.
No, you're
that's
good,
cool
man.
that you're willing to interface with your backers and talk to them about that.
Oh yeah. I really love talking to backers and if they need anything or if they're wondering about something, or they with the original sketch option, I'm gonna have, when I send out the surveys, you can choose which character from Man-Child that you want an original sketch from. That's something that I've done with Seasons too. So like if you want a sketch of Monarch Crier, or if you want a sketch of Rufus or Professor Pilgrim, like you can choose which one you want from the book, and that's specifically for you because you decided it. So you won't just get like a random sketch or something.
That's nice too.
I did want to show real quick. I have the original art for that Tony Harris cover. I love showing that off. So this is
that's definitely something worth holding on to right there, man. That's fantastic.
Yeah, people have asked me like, is that for sale? I'm like, no, like this is mine.
No, this is mine.
It's going on my wall.
Yeah. So, but that was he's one of my favorite artists, and for him to be kind enough to send me that and be a part of this project was a real big dream of mine to be able to work with him. So it's a really special image, and specifically too within the story, the relationship between Monarch Crier, whose name is George Jeffrey, his relationship with his girlfriend, fiance, Joanne, is inspired by the love between Stanley and his wife. So you can already see like Stanley's name was Joan, and his wife's name is Joanne. So it's a play on that, and there is a romance between these characters.
You probably know everything. You probably studied butterflies, right? You probably you went into migratory patterns and how long it takes for them to metamorphosize, and what
you're right, dude. You're right.
You're right what you know. That's
so you have to know it.
You're one of those writers where everything is deliberate, everything is purposeful, and you have to know what you're writing about for it to be authentic.
Yeah, a question I'll have, I won't answer it here, but I do want people to think about, and I'll pose to viewers and to you because you love this kind of stuff. What do the Monarch Butterfly and comic books have in common? So that's something that is being is a comment on that. So I would look into that and see what you come up with.
That's very. Then now I need to go learn more about monarch butterflies. You've achieved your objective, good sir. Really, this is all just raising awareness for endangered butterflies of North and South America. That's really all this is. It's big news. Have you ever read The Escapist by Michael Chabon?
I haven't. People have told me about it, and it kind of.
You're writing about comic books the way that Chabon wrote about comic book authors. So in The Escapist, it's essentially the creators of Superman. I can't Schuster and somebody I can't.
Yeah, Siegel and Schuster.
Siegel. I want to say Simon and Schuster.
Simon and Schuster is a book publisher.
Siegel and Schuster. It's essentially them, but it's fictionalized, and they actually have a character named the Escapist, who he's kind of like Batman because he's an escape artist, but he's also given magical powers, so he's a little bit, not human really, so he's more like Houdini. So he establishes these guys as contemporaries in the story of Siegel and Schuster and Batman. Who wrote Batman? Can't remember who wrote
Bill
Batman
Finger
now.
and Bob Kane. Yeah.
Bob Kane, yeah.
Yeah,
so
Bob
he has
Kane,
them
yeah.
writing as contemporaries, and of course, he has the Escapist punch Hitler the way that Captain America punched Hitler. So they design these, and they work out.
Yeah, I
their
need to
own
read
inner
that. That sounds
turmoil.
great.
They work
Yeah.
out their own inner turmoil through the comic books that they tell. So Chabon writes about these guys, these comic book creators, and their lives as they experience their lives expressed through comics. So it's multiple levels
Wow.
of descending
Yeah, that's
into
awesome.
understanding the comic book medium, the creators, what's going on in them through the comics that they're writing. And of course, all of it's just fictionalized because Chabon is writing a novel, but it's really an introspective for him. Like, that's the type of author that I'm getting vibes. I'm getting vibes like that off of you. And Chabon is phenomenal. So
Man, I need to read that.
keep
That
it up,
sounds
keep it up.
sounds great.
it's a
Thank
great
you,
book. It's
yeah.
one of the only books that I've finished.
That's not true. You've read a lot of books. You've finished a lot of books. Currently, you've just been reading a lot of nonfiction for writing.
I extract information with my eyes through the written form. Yeah, through the visual medium. That's what I do. I don't read anymore, but yeah, it was one of the last books that I let's put it this way. I read it twice. Okay, I read it once through and enjoyed it, and then I was like, what did I miss? What didn't I really get? What deeper elements to the story are there? I need to read it again. So it was once as like an experience and another time as an investigator, seeing what he did. And that's the type of reading, like the critical assessment and critical thinking that we used to do in school, like when we would read for more thorough reading comprehension. That was the kind of reading that we did. So for this guy to encourage me to read his story the way that we read and analyzed and really delved into text back in school, to get me to want to do what I did in school on my free time, that was a feat, to get me to understand this text. Anyway, yeah, we're just descending into tangents now.
Say that.
Yeah, what whatever. But it's, the other thing is, like, I thought the comic book, the character, the butterfly character, there's a character in The Escapist. Also, Creators Outlet mentioned Arthur, from The Tick, the moth character.
Oh yeah,
There's a good number. Originally, I thought of the Monarch from Venture Brothers when I looked at.
Yeah, people have mentioned that, and that's something I need to watch too.
And then I looked at Rufus and I was like, oh God, it's 2-ton 21. It's 21. So if you ever watch the Venture Brothers, there are these henchmen, 21 and 23. And they're kind of the Rosencrantz and Guildenstern of the series. The series is very smart. It's very well written,
Cool.
very smart. Just very clever, thoughtful. Once again, meta. It's a story inside of a story. It's a discussion or critique of a genre while experiencing and loving the genre. So it's very similar. But that character loses his friend, 23. I'm totally ruining the story for you now. Oh well, sucks to be you. But he buffs up as a result, and he becomes a badass. And
Okay.
they, he goes from being like the pot-bellied doughboy, goofball who's hanging out with his friend, into becoming like a real badass comic book supervillain henchman. And so I looked at Rufus. I was like, "Oh my god, it's 2-Ton-21. Throw a butterfly suit on him, and he could totally be that guy. Just buff up, get more macho." All right. So, is there anything else you want to touch on? We're going for like an hour and 40 minutes because I got derailed and enjoyed myself during this interview.
Yeah. I think I just want everyone to know that if you're someone who loves comics and you love reading, if you remember the first time you read a comic and you went to a comic book store, that's what this comic and this story is about. It's about reigniting that imagination and that wonder of what it's like to look at your heroes and look up to them and be inspired by them, and to be so absorbed into that world and to not want it to end. That's what this story is really trying to do, and on multiple levels. And
I can't wait to see what you do, because you could go either way,
Yeah.
you could go the Kathleen Kennedy route of let the past die, kill it if you have to, or you could go through like the rejuvenation cycle where like you rebirth the old ways into the new ways. Like, we've got such potential with this story. It's killing me. I want to read issue 6 right now.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's I gotta say, like I said, it is the most exciting thing I've worked on. It's also the funnest book that you'll read of mine, so it is a lot of fun. That's something that was really important for the story, as I want people to read it. I want it to put a smile on their face. I want it to make them laugh and make them think about what it means to be just a comic book fan, and to look back at their childhood and just really appreciate that. And it's really funny. It is a funny book, and but it has a lot of heart to it, and that's something that I always inject into my stories, and I want people to just bask in that and enjoy that, and know that it comes from a sincere place of observation and joy, and just contentment and frustration and all those things. It is a mixed bag of emotions, and this story is my way of
hate and all of my sorrow.
Yeah.
Some of the best stuff is just really built on raw emotional experience, because you make sense out of it later.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think that's going to be it for us today. Thanks to both of you guys for showing up, for Hex and Tank for swinging through. It's great to see you guys. Hex Allen is actually funding Nephilim Squadron right now. He is our co-pilot. If you back both Mavericks and Nephilim Squadron, you get a really cool crossover print called Glavmav. It's his Nephilim Squadron fighters and our Mavs underneath, just this beautiful composition, like land and sky. It's gorgeous. And Tank, thank you very much for showing up too. Tank, the senior vice president of Brain Cage. I got that direct from Greg last night, Tank. So if you didn't know that was your title, now you do. Where can we find you on social media, Nandor?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Nandor Fox and Twitter at Nandor Fox Shaffer. So just look up my name, and I always say this, but I'm probably the only Nandor that you know, so it should be easy to find me. And especially the only Nandor that's probably making comics or is in the indie comic scene. So I
ignored that question entirely. Where what is your background, and how did you get the name Nandor?
Yeah, so my mom is Hungarian. She's from Hungary, and so it is a Hungarian name. If you've ever seen What We Do in the Shadows, the one of the characters there is named Nandor the Relentless. So that's probably the first time I've ever seen my character, my name,
Used
like
on a
in pop
fictional,
culture or whatever. Yeah, yeah. So it's actually kind of satisfying, but
I mean,
yeah,
having the
like
name Nandor the Relentless is not a bad way to start off, right?
yeah, yeah, not at all. So people see that, and I think they expect a lot from me, but I'm just a writer here, I'm just doing my thing. But yeah, just find me on there. I'm happy to chat. You can, my DMs are open and people want to talk. If they have any questions about the campaign, or how they can support it or whatever, just hit me up and let me know. People that are watching, if you've backed it, you can always tag me and I'll share it out. And I love thanking backers, and I love knowing who is interested in my work. So definitely hit me up for sure.
And you can find all of that information in the description below the video.
Right. So until next time, don't forget to like, subscribe, click the bell for notifications.
And tune into the frequency.
We'll see you next time.